Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Robert McCaw. I am the National Director of Government Affairs for the Council on American Islamic Relations, and this is CAIR on the Air. We are looking at today for our program, Are You Going to Vote? How to Mobilize Muslims During the COVID Pandemic. And to start us off, I'm going to introduce CAIR National's Deputy Director, Edward Mitchell. Edward, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Robert, how are you? I'm doing well, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. You know, balancing work and family life, it's always a fun challenge during this pandemic. And we have a really action-packed episode today where we talk on the Muslim Power Hour about the elections and how our chapters are handling it nationwide and what CAIR National is doing. But before we jump into that, I want to talk about ICE's new cruel, dangerous, and really xenophobic attack on international students. Can you break down for us what's going on?
Sure. So Immigrations and Customs Enforcement yesterday announced that they are going to require any international students who are currently in the country on a student visa to leave the country if their school, their college or university shifts completely to online learning. Right now, there are regulations in place that say any foreign student who is attending school here cannot just attend online classes only. They have to be attending in-person classes. But in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, ICE issued an exemption to foreign students during the spring semester, so the students didn't have to comply with that regulation. But what ICE has now announced is that starting in the fall semester, that exemption will not apply. So any international student who is right now in this country, attending college, attending university, according to this decision by ICE, they will have to either transfer to a school that has in-person classes, or they will have to literally get out of the country or face deportation. That is what ICE announced just yesterday.
Interesting. And just to make it clear for anyone listening to the program, this new policy would affect F1 visa students and also M1 visa students. And M1s are the temporary month or two students that come here for special learning. But if you're in college, all your friends that are here on an F1 visa, if your school has gone to full online learning, they may be kicked out of this country. Edward, you issued a statement today about that. What did you say?
Right. So, I mean, look, this, we said is that this is just the latest example of the Trump administration's obsession with targeting, smearing, and punishing immigrants. It is xenophobia, plain and simple. What the government is essentially doing is telling immigrants that you can either risk your life getting on a plane back to your home country, or you can risk your life trying to scramble to find a physical classroom to sit in to go to school. This is so unnecessary. The only explanation for it is xenophobia, that the Trump administration is just looking for an excuse to harm immigrants and is trying to punish them and essentially force them out of the country. Many colleges and universities are quite correctly deciding to hold online only learning this fall to make sure that people are not exposed to COVID-19. That's perfectly reasonable. It makes no sense to force students to leave the country when they might have to do online learning for only a semester or maybe two. They should be able to stay in the country and go to school. This is a solution in search of a problem. It is a bad idea. And again, the only reason for this could possibly be hostility towards people of an international or foreign background. So what we said today is that, number one, ICE, the Trump administration, should reverse this cruel, unnecessary, and dangerous decision. Number two, Congress should put pressure on the administration to do so. We never have any expectation that the Trump administration will do the right thing on their own, though sometimes you never know, you'll be surprised. But Congress should speak up and demand the Trump administration do the right thing and reverse this decision. And finally, colleges and universities need to be prepared for the possibility that this rule may still be in place when the fall semester starts. If that is the case, then we think colleges and universities need to get creative, need to think of ways to ensure that international students can somehow meet the very minimum requirements of this rule. And there are all sorts of crazy, ways that they may be able to think to do that, that are keeping students safe, but also allowing them to stay in the country and go to school. Obviously they'll have to think about that, but they really shouldn't have to do that. It should not come to that. The Trump administration should extend the exemption to students, international students studying online during the fall semester. Let them stay in the country. It makes no sense. You are endangering not only their educational future by putting them in this situation, you are literally endangering their lives by forcing them to either find a school where they can sit in a classroom around other people, thus potentially exposing themselves to COVID-19, or you're forcing them to get on a plane and go back to their home country, which is obviously very dangerous to be engaging in air travel right now. And if they don't do either one of those things, then they are at risk of being arrested and locked in an immigration detention center, which is another level of horror and injustice, given how negative and dangerous conditions are within the prison system in the United States, and the fact that you've had significant issues with COVID-19 exposure in detention centers. So look, it's bad option one, bad option two, bad option three, and they're all unnecessary. This has got to be reversed. And I know there are some organizations looking at filing lawsuits to make that happen. If that's the way it's got to go, so be it. But really, the Trump administration should just do the right thing, and Congress should force them to do it by any means necessary.
I would encourage everyone to go to CAIR's website. That's www.cair.com. Go to our website. It's one of our top 3 press releases right now. We have an action alert. You can contact your member of Congress. That's your representative and your 2 senators, and tell them to do the right thing and push ICE. On a personal note, my family was a little freaked out last night. My wife has a cousin. They're from Bangladesh, and he's studying in America. And we had to figure out how many courses he was taking online versus in person, and they just made it. But that's not going to be the case for everyone. And if you care about justice, you should be acting on this and visiting CAIR's website.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely sign the action alert, contact your member of Congress, encourage them to speak up, because it's that kind of pressure from Democrats and Republicans and independents and others that may hopefully force the Trump administration to do the right thing. So raise your voice loud and clear.
Well, thank you so much, Edward, for joining us and educating us on this breaking and important issue. And I think we'll have more coverage about this in the coming week.
Inshallah. And thank you, Robert, for all the work that you're doing on this and so many other issues. We appreciate you, brother. May Allah reward you and increase you in goodness in this life and the next. Same for your family.
Likewise. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right. Wa alaikum assalam. For our next 2 guests we have Sister Rania Al-Gandhi. She is our CAIR Florida Programs and Outreach Director. And we also have Saladin Maksut. He is the CAIR New Jersey Executive Director. They're joining us for the program now. They have joined us. Thank you so much, David, our producer. A lot is going on with this election. The primaries have not stopped. They continue. They've been delayed. They've been pushed back, but they continue to happen. We already have a presidential frontrunner with the Democratic Party, Joe Biden. Trump is the presumed, and he's the nominee for the Republican Party. This is going to happen on November 3rd. We just actually had a presidential and state primary in New Jersey today. CAIR National had a robocall that went out last night and hit several thousand households, encouraging Muslims to turn out and vote responsibly, by mail if need be, take precautions, but vote. That's how we build community power. And Sister Rania, I want to hear more from you, because in August, we have another election in Florida, and these primaries really determine who's on the ballot box in November. So this is going to be a great program, especially just want to think right now, how is CAIR, how is the Muslim community itself organizing during this global pandemic when we thought things might be getting better, but it looks like it might be getting a little worse outside? How do we safely mobilize the vote? If you don't mind, I'm first going to jump to CAIR New Jersey Executive Director, Saladin Maksut. Tell us what is happening. You have an election going on right now. What have you been doing in preparation? And what are you doing moving forward?
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Robert. And thank you all so much for having me. Alhamdulillah, we are preparing to vote. A lot is going on here in New Jersey. I know people have been submitting their mail-in ballots that they've received. As we all know, of course, the original date was in June, but according to the governor's executive order, it had pushed it to today. So today is the last day to submit your mail-in ballots, or some locations are open for you to vote in person. Of course, there are safety measures put in place for people to do that at selective locations. But before I go any further into the election, and what's happening here on the ground in New Jersey, some interesting news that's kind of unfolded in the past couple of days that our chapter has been heavily involved in. We just signed a public letter in support of a lawsuit that is going to be challenging the famous, ballot line situation here in New Jersey. So for those that don't know, you can Google what they call ballot Siberia, and you'll see that oftentimes candidates that challenge the incumbent are often disenfranchised, and their names are placed very awkwardly on the ballot, and it makes it very confusing and hard to understand for those that are trying to select the candidate of their choice. So there's a lawsuit that's challenging this confusing ballot structure, calling for a structure that is actually similar to the rest of the country. It turns out New Jersey is one of the only states in the nation that still uses this ballot line system. So we're happy to support this lawsuit. We're happy to call action to change this and bring a fair approach to the election cycle, to the election process, and kind of restore the integrity and democracy of the elections, inshallah.
Thank you. And by the way, if you Google that, if you're used to a regular ballot in another state, you might think that this one other candidate in the far left was like a member of a third party that wasn't on the Democratic ballot. So it might not get the attention. Before we jump into the election results today or what is happening, we're joined by one more CAIR chapter guest. We have Hodu Dahir. She is our CAIR Minnesota Government Affairs Coordinator, and we definitely want to hear what's happening in Minnesota because that is one of those swing states. So thank you so much for joining. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thanks for having me, Brother Robert.
Thank you. We're going to have a roundtable soon. So Saladin, take it off. We're having an election today. What's going on?
So everyone has received their mail-in ballots already a few weeks ago, actually. And if they haven't already submitted it, they can still do so today before 8 p.m. tonight. So they can go to their local county clerk's office and drop it off. If they haven't even registered yet, they can still do that today at the county clerk's office in person. But if you've already received the ballot and you have it in hand, and you can drop it off safely at a location, or again at the county clerk's office. And various seats are up for election. Of course, the presidential office, Senator Cory Booker's seat is up for grabs. He has a competitor named Larry Ham, and other candidates, and of course freeholders and other local elections are happening. And the 12 House of Representatives, all of their 12 seats are up for grabs. And yeah, just a lot is going on. A lot of interesting races, a lot of competitors. So everyone's working to push the vote at the very last minute, inshallah.
What is CAIR New Jersey doing to get out the vote?
So we've hosted a few different webinars to kind of explain to people how the mail-in ballot process works. Kind of broke down the step-by-step process. And we've also, entered the TikTok game. So now we're on TikTok and we're kind of introducing the how-to, making some videos for the youth, encouraging them to, go out and vote. And of course, with the help of CAIR National, you guys have, made those robocalls to, I believe, over 1,500 Muslim Jersey Muslim residents.
I think it was 15 to 20,000. Yeah.
MashaAllah. So
household, so that's a bigger reach too.
MashaAllah. So there you go. So I'm, keeping active online, newsletters, emails, social media, all these platforms, encouraging people, educating them, encouraging them to, use their voices and be active in the last day.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to jump back to you after we hear from our two other guests. I just want to now pivot to CAIR Florida. Like Minnesota, there's a primary happening. I know in Minnesota they already had their presidential, but they have another state primary coming up in August. So we'll hear about that in a second too. But tell me, what is happening in Florida? This is now one of the key epicenter states where the virus has shifted, and yet the Muslim vote is still going to rock the state. Tell me how that's going to happen.
Yes, absolutely. So, Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having us on, Robert. So you're absolutely right. It's been a very important election year, and you have a swing state, and there's so much to talk about the role that Florida has played in past elections as well. And the Muslim vote is absolutely critical. And I think hopefully one of the things that we'll discuss is how people underestimate, the value of the Muslim vote, and how even in Florida, we've seen that Muslims can make up voting margins and then some. So they're very critical to our elections, alhamdulillah. We are 12 days out from the deadline to register to vote for the primaries, which are going to be in August 28th. So right now we're kind of full out on getting folks registered to vote before the deadline for the primaries. Of course, there's another deadline before the general election. And we're also pushing people to complete their census as well, as we kind of get them to register to vote and complete their census. We actually have next week is going to be a 5-day CAIR Florida challenge, where we're encouraging folks not just to register themselves, but also to make sure that their friends and their families and their networks are registered. So each day of the week, they'll have like a different goal that they're trying to get to. And then finally, as Salahuddin said, just doing webinars where we really educate people on, the importance of local elections. They hear from the supervisor of elections. They know what the process is. They know how to vote. They know how to request their vote by mail ballots. And also just providing that educational material. So everything is virtual now. So just as much as we can, providing graphics and flyers that we can share with the community, whether it's via WhatsApp or via email or via social media. So a lot of engagement right now in Florida. And we're also, have been talking with our elected officials and setting up constituent meetings. And so hopefully when you make your rounds again, we'll talk about what the officials are saying and how we know how critical the Muslim vote really is. So
yeah, I want to know how we know the Muslim vote's
yes.
Great. We're going to shift now to Sister Hodo Dahir with CAIR Minnesota. Please tell us what is happening in Minnesota and how are you guys going to rock the vote?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you, Robert, Brother Robert. Very glad to be here with you all. My name is Hodo Dahir. I am with the Government Affairs Coordinator. And here in Minnesota, it's been quite a month for us, as we've been through a lot of things, not only with the pandemics, but as well as social justice issues. So the ways that we're rocking out our vote is what we're doing both virtually and going to the protests and inviting people to register while we're out there. It's, as you mentioned earlier, our primary is coming up on August, as well as the census still going on. So we're spending a lot of time getting the census to the people, explaining them to how much important it is to be counted and be mattered at the same time, because not only your number matters, but your vote counts, and everybody needs to be counted. Especially as a Muslim community here in Minnesota, we're all over in the state of Minnesota, and just this past week, we were in the greater Minnesota, in St. Cloud, Wilmer, Rochester, where we provided food, but as well as informing the people how to vote, how to register for the census, and really combining our civic engagement and voting registrations and everything, and really working on grassroots as well as virtually. Our sister mentioned and our brother mentioned, social media has been a great help for all of us, really just sending people all the information that they needed, but also translating because there's a lot of translations that needs to be done. So we're translating in Somali, in Oromo, in Arabic, as much as that we can translate all of it. But we're really engaging in our community. We have websites or links that we can send to people so they can sign up for the census directly there. We have webinars this whole month of July. We're spending on civic engagement, just about census, doing a lot of webinars for our community, explaining on how to apply for the census to be counted, and as well as get out and vote.
And that's what I'm hearing from every chapter, that the census is still ongoing, that civic engagement also is civic empowerment at the same time. And it's the dual request of, did you fill out your census? Did you register to vote? Are you aware of the election? And so I'm hearing that from all of you. It's the work of, it's not just you guys, it is the work of every CAIR chapter right now. And that's important for the Muslim community. Really quick, I'd love to give an update what CAIR National is doing. Hey, our producer, David, could you pull up our new website, Muslims.vote? One second from our producer. I'm really excited about this. It took several weeks to develop, and then we realized that, oh no, we don't have a vote by mail section. And then it took another 2 weeks to track down all the information. So if you're watching this program, we just went over to a screen capture. We can see that David is a big fan of Reddit and Amazon and SoundCloud, and has lots of anti-racist resources. And underneath that, if you can see, it's our Muslims.vote website. That's all you have to do. You have to go in your search bar and you can type Muslims.vote. And if you do that, you're going to get a lot of resources. Every week, CAIR's issuing updated action alerts where we're just posting more information about the election that's important to the Muslim community. We have to update this one to show the New Jersey and Delaware action alert that we sent yesterday. We have poll results from surveys that we're doing. Our biggest poll recently was the Super Tuesday poll back in March, but we are also continuing, and we're going to have another big election poll in August. So that's our pre-election poll. We'll also be doing a night of the election exit poll. We have a lot of good reasons why to vote. If you actually scroll up to the top of the website, you'll see that we have a lot of resources for people. If you click on our resources page, you get links on how to vote locally, where to register, all sorts of information, good factoids for you. We just want to make sure that you're getting the right links to vote successfully. And finally, if you just go up one more time and you click on vote by mail, we have a 50-state guide that's just going to let you know. Click on any state. Let's go to New Jersey. There we go. Massachusetts. If we go to Massachusetts, which is where I and David are from, you'll see, again, just information on how to vote by mail in the general election, where to click for your state resources, and also what are the deadlines for your state. So you'll see that in Massachusetts on November 2nd, your ballot request, to request the ballot, it has to be made by the 2nd. And then, of course, it has to be submitted, mailed by the 3rd. So we have this information for every state, so you know how to vote by mail. We're really going to put a lot of stock into voting by mail this election. Thank you so much, David, for sharing this website and information with us. Kind of turning back to what everyone is doing. When you guys have updates for the election, we hope to post it there as well. But I want to get into it. Some things CAIR National plans on doing. In August, we're going to be finalizing a contract for peer-to-peer virtual texting banks. So we'll be working with CAIR chapters, hopefully providing some small grants to get everyone started, where you can host virtually, not in person, text messaging campaigns where we can be urging Muslims to vote one-on-one. You can't robocall text cell phones, it's against the law, but we can George Jetson our way into the future of Muslim voting power by just clicking over and over again and sending messages out. And anyone who responds, we then get to kind of mass text them on November 2nd saying, get out the vote tomorrow. So I know that's one big thing. And, as Saladin said, we're doing robocalls. We're going to do virtual webinars like everyone else. It's really hard to organize the vote over the internet, though. So what are some of the things that our chapters, what are you doing? What are your plans as you get closer to the election?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and jump in, Robert. So one of those things that as you're texting folks, right, and as we send out this text and the messages, you're either in one of two situations, right? You're either preaching to the choir and folks are registered to vote and they're going to vote, which is great, and we need to encourage them to still get out. Or you're kind of speaking to a different group of Muslims, which the question then becomes, well, why? Like, why is it so important? Or like, maybe I'll do it, but it's not a priority right now. And so I think it's important that, all of the chapters, we're all equipped kind of to answer this question. And there's a lot of reasons that you should vote. I'll give you four, just four, as using Florida as a case example. But the takeaway is that the Muslim community has been reactionary for far too long. We always react to policies happening to us, and voting is really changing the mentality of our community to say that we have to be proactive in preventing things by really electing the leadership that we want to see before the problems happen. So, just in Florida, and again, we mentioned briefly that Florida elections have been won. The Florida governor, he just won by 0.4% of the Muslim vote. George W. Bush, he won by like 530 votes.
People.
I know, but I have to remind them because we have
for George Bush.
Pre-COVID, we have masjids that have more than 500 people at Jummah. So when you say like Muslims, don't have the numbers, I mean, the paper, the proof shows that they do. Even Trump, a more recent example, I know we don't want to remind them of that either, but he won his election by less than 1 percentage point, right? And so especially Florida being a swing state, I mean, right now we are famous for being the COVID capital of the country, right? And if we're not happy with our leadership, then voting is how we kind of express that discontentment and how we say that we're actually going to elect leaders that we want to see, making the decisions that need to be made. In Florida, we have laws that have passed by this administration that make criticizing Israel illegal. It makes it, you can be labeled as an anti-Semite and then face legal, consequences to that. You can lose your state contract by criticizing Israel. We have bills that are mandating Bible study in Florida public schools. And then of course, when we talk about elections, and I really want to hear from Sister Hudu, when we say, the incitement and everything that's happening with racial equity in the country right now, I mean, who else is elected? Your sheriff is elected, your mayor is elected, your city county commissioners who are making these policies and making these budgets are elected. So these are all reasons, and there's, on and on, but I want to, hear from the other panelists as well. But the point is that if we're going to, instead of protesting and be angry at these policies that are being made, how about we use the tools that we have to kind of prevent those bad decisions from being made from the get-go? And how we do that is we vote. And so we really have to get that message across to our community members, inshallah.
Well, Sister Hodu, Minnesota has been, if Florida has been the capital of COVID now, Minnesota is the capital of the resistance, where Black Lives Matter and it all starts. So how is that translating into Muslim voting power? And how are you looking at officials and making sure that they're standing with our community? Reminder, we're a 501c3. We're not endorsing, but we love to educate.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Sister Rania. That was really great, very informative, and glad to hear you guys are doing an amazing job there too as well. Well, as I mentioned here, in Minnesota, we really are in a crisis about social justice issues. And not only are we very resistant, but CAIR Minnesota has been forefront. We've been advocating for, on behalf of not only our Muslim community, but everyone who was out here, and showing how to lead by example rather than just reacting and just doing everything, being the writing and all that. No, we're actually, the first day that we heard, we wrote letters to the governor, we wrote letters to the state attorney asking these 4 individuals, officers, to be arrested on behalf of our Muslim community. So representing us and showing them that we need to do something different. But as you mentioned, we elect these individuals. And as we elect them, are they doing on behalf of their communities what they're supposed to do? And Minnesota has, especially Minneapolis, it's a progressive city, but still we see a lot of resistance on things and change. It's not happening as we would like to see it. So the best way to do that is let the Muslim community come out, show them the names on the ballot. It's the same way Ilhan Omar came out from there. We need more of those individuals. We need more Muslims to represent and take their lives and change them for themselves. And alhamdulillah, we have a lot of Muslim communities who are running for not only city council, not only representative, not only superintendents in their districts, but we know that locally it matters as well, not only nationally, but locally is where you can make the biggest difference. So we're encouraging the Muslim community to also participate in their local voting registrations and primary and city councils, and as well as the national, as of course, we don't want to be left behind in there. But with the social justice issue, it's really important that we are aware of what's really happening and how this is affecting us. Just the other day, a sister who was getting a coffee from Starbucks, her name was written ISIS.
Yeah. So
that has been now on a national conversation, but we know that these things cannot just be a joke for us. So how do we allow our representatives and everybody to speak out against things like that and show them, hey, we voted for you. You need to keep up your word and promise that you made to your people. But we got to be on the grassroots. We got to be be part of the conversation that's happening. We got to write letters to the governors and the state, whoever you have to, who's got to make the changes in your community. We got to be the forefront, because at the end of the day, if we're not, CAIR Minnesota is not leading the conversation, then who's going to lead for our Muslim community?
Definitely. Thank you for all the work that you are doing in Minnesota. And I know how much the community values and responds to your press release and calls to action because you turn out numbers. It's amazing. Saladin, New Jersey, the election's happening right now. More results. Just wondering, how are local officials running for office, candidates, how are they responding to the Muslim community? Are they talking to our concerns?
Absolutely. And I think, alhamdulillah, I'm very proud to say actually that according to a CAIR national report, I think 2018, New Jersey has, I believe, the most elected officials, Muslim elected officials in the nation. I mean, that ranges from everything from Board of Education, councilmen, freeholders, you name it. So we really do have a robust and active community here in New Jersey, and very well respected and really at the table participating in these conversations. And even our masajids, I see them more and more now participating in these conversations. And we are encouraging, the scholars to, dedicate their khutbahs to civic engagement, me included, moving around throughout the community into these intimate circles and these intimate spaces and these places of, sanctity, the masajids, and telling people that it is, a form of worship to participate in the civic process. It is an ibadah, right? And that it is a process in which, we can use to sow righteousness into the earth, right? It is a means through which we can establish the values, of our deen and the values that we hold so dearly. And as we've seen, throughout the nation in the past 4 weeks, the victories that have come about as a result of the protests. So alhamdulillah, that's been very successful. But now it's time to take the next step. And now it's time to vote and continue the momentum. Because, if we listen to the conversations that are being had, we shouldn't describe this as a moment, but rather it's a movement, right? And that movement can be continued if we start, taking the steps to legislate and vote and engage our politicians. And once again, it really is a part of our deen to be active, to be participating in the process, and to have our voices be heard, inshallah.
Inshallah. I 4 years ago, I actually went to CAIR, New Jersey, and I went to a civic empowerment event somewhere in northern New Jersey. Forgive me for not remembering which masjid. There was 5 elected Muslim officials in that room. And that was the first time I saw so many, and these are all local. I think maybe there was one state rep, but the rest are just local. They were on city councils, school boards. I was so impressed. And I think that it's an example that the nation, all our Muslim communities, that we need to follow. With that, we've actually, I know it's the Muslim Action Hour, but we're actually about a 30-minute program. It's time to think about the things we talked about for an hour. So let's get big picture. If we put up a billboard today, what's that one message you would put out there? Saladin, you're on, so why don't you take us off, and then we'll go round robin.
I think I just want to reemphasize the importance of be voting as ibadah, right? And I always think of the hadith from our Prophet ﷺ that says to use your hand, use your tongue, and then your heart, And if you use your hand, protest. And if you use your tongue, vote. And if you hate something in your heart, you hate it. And this is the weakest of faith. So maybe this hadith can be on a billboard encouraging people to vote, inshallah.
Inshallah. Sister Hodu? Big billboard moment. What are you going to put on the billboard?
Well, thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Brother Robert, and to our other panelists. That was really great here with y'all. I would put that in order to overcome injustice, you must do something that's justice, and use this as you're voting your right to do something justice, not only for yourself, but for your community. As our brother mentioned, this is not a moment that we're in. It's a movement across the nation, and it started all in here in Minneapolis. And so it's going to spark everyone. So make this moment count.
Make it count. Sister Anya.
So, well, it's a difficult question, but the principle that I always try to emphasize is shared humanity. I think that too often we just forget about our shared humanity, and whether it's politically or racially or social justice driven, like that's the disconnect, right? Is that we don't really focus on that enough. So I think I would just have a billboard with the word human, period, stop, full stop.
I would just say, don't take a photo with an elected official, take stock.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining today's program. Again, we are live on the air this Thursday, and I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to be talking about ICE's new policy that we talked about in the beginning, where they are going to revoke the visas of any student that is just only has online learning as their option. So we're going to do more in-depth coverage of that. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and please join us again. All right. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.